For most of us, checking the weather is probably one of the, I don't know, lowest stakes decisions we make on any given morning.
Right. Yeah, it really is.
You wake up, you glance at your phone, and you make
Yeah.
a call.
Yeah.
Like, am I grabbing a jacket today or am I leaving it on the hook?
Exactly. It's a minor convenience.
Yeah. But I want to shift how you think about that little app on your home screen for this deep dive today. We tend to think of weather data as a broadcast, something just sort of pushed out to us.
Like a radio station.
Right. But in reality, it operates much more like a municipal water supply. For you and me, we're just turning on the tap in the kitchen to fill a glass.
Mm-hmm.
But for global industries, that exact same data pipeline is the water pressure keeping the entire city's infrastructure from just completely collapsing.
It really completely reframes the scale of the issue.
Yeah.
And the vulnerability of that pipeline is exactly why we're digging into this today.
Yeah.
We are looking at a July 17th, 2026 item from the AI News Digest, and they're synthesizing a rather alarming piece from Technology Review.
Alarming is definitely the word for it.
It really is. We're looking at a threat that I'd say most people don't even know exists, which is the escalating risk of weather data sabotage.
Right.
We're sitting right at this collision point of artificial intelligence, massive data ingestion, and the kind of high-stakes, real-world decision-making that literally keeps the global economy functioning.
I'm really glad you brought up the idea of a pipeline earlier, because I want to abandon the old way of thinking about this. Like, if someone messes with a weather forecast, my immediate thought goes to, some prankster.
Right, like someone hacked a local TV station and put a funny graphic on the screen behind the meteorologist.
Exactly. But the Technology Review piece makes it terrifyingly clear that we are not talking about human-facing graphics. We're talking about the automated machine-to-machine data streams.
Yes.
The raw numbers that are streaming via APIs directly into the operating systems of major industries.
And that distinction is just paramount here. The source text highlights 3 specific sectors that are completely reliant on this invisible data layer.
Okay, lay them out for us.
So we're talking about airline dispatchers, electrical grid operators, and industrial agriculture.
Got it.
These professionals, they are not watching a meteorologist point at a green map on a screen. They are feeding raw, hyperlocal atmospheric data directly into their own predictive algorithms.
Right.
So public safety and economic stability are the direct, immediate result of them trusting the data appearing on their screens.
So let's actually dig into the mechanics of that, because I think it's easy to just nod along and say, well, sure, planes need to know the weather.
Yeah, it sounds obvious on the surface.
But it's not just about, avoiding turbulence so the passengers don't spill their coffee in first class.
Not at all.
The dispatchers are charting the course of the entire day based on, decimal points.
They absolutely are. I mean, consider the actual physics of commercial aviation. A dispatcher is calculating fuel loads down to the single gallon. Wow.
And to do that safely and to do it economically, they need to know the exact air temperature and barometric pressure at the departure airport, at their cruising altitude, and at the destination.
Okay, so why does the temperature matter that much for a jet engine?
Because warmer air is less dense.
Oh, right.
And less dense air means the wings literally generate less lift and the engines generate less thrust.
So if a plane is taking off in hotter weather, it actually needs, more runway to get off the ground?
Exactly. It needs a longer runway, or it has to carry less weight.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If the data feed falsely reports that the ambient temperature at a major hub is going to be, say, a mild 65 degrees, but it's actually going to be 95 degrees.
That's a massive difference.
Huge. That dispatcher might load a heavy cargo configuration and just a standard fuel load.
Right.
When the plane actually tries to take off in that 95-degree thin air, it might literally not have the thrust to clear the runway safely.
That is terrifying. Or conversely, let's say they hallucinate a major storm that doesn't actually exist.
The system tells them to prepare for terrible weather.
Right. So they load thousands of pounds of unnecessary contingency fuel just to be safe.
But fuel is heavy.
Exactly. That extra weight burns more fuel just to carry it. It ends up costing airlines millions of dollars across a fleet, and it disrupts global airspace logistics for absolutely no reason.
The waste is astronomical.
Yeah.
But, as bad as the airline scenario is, the one that really made me stop in my tracks in the digest was the electrical grid.
Yes, the grid is uniquely vulnerable.
Because I always sort of assumed that power grids were relatively reactive. Like if everybody comes home at 5 p.m. and turns on their air conditioning, the power company just flips a switch and spins up another generator to meet the demand.
It is a very common misconception, but the reality is much more precarious.
How so?
The electrical grid has virtually no storage capacity.
Wait, really? None?
Practically none at that scale. Electricity generation and consumption must be perfectly balanced in real time, literally millisecond by millisecond.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
had no idea it was that tight.
It's incredibly tight. If demand outstrips supply, the frequency of the alternating current drops. And if it drops too far, the physical machinery, like the actual giant spinning turbines at the power plants, can literally tear themselves apart from the vibrations.
Just physically break down.
Yes. So to prevent that from happening, automated breakers trip, and you get a cascading blackout.
Okay, so the grid is less like a giant battery you can just draw from, and more like this massive, delicate balancing act on a tightrope.
That's a perfect analogy. A tightrope where the operator is blindfolded and only has a weather forecast to guide them.
Right, because they can't see the demand until it hits.
Exactly. And you cannot just flip a switch to turn on a coal or nuclear plant.
It takes time.
It takes hours, sometimes days, to heat the boilers and synchronize those massive turbines to the grid's exact frequency.
So they have to know days in advance what the weather's going to do.
Yes. So grid operators rely heavily on temperature forecasts to predict that future demand. If the API says tomorrow will be a present 72 degrees, the operator will intentionally spin down expensive, carbon-heavy peaker plants to save money.
But if the data is being manipulated,
If a malicious actor subtly alters that data stream to hide an incoming 100-degree heat wave, the operator spins down the plants.
and then the heat wave hits.
The heat wave hits. Millions of air conditioners turn on simultaneously. The demand skyrockets, there is no spinning reserve to meet it. The frequency plummets, and the grid collapses.
Just like that.
Just like that. Hospitals lose primary power, traffic lights go dark, water treatment plants shut down.
So we aren't just talking about a financial hit for the power company here. We are talking about immediate, massive threats to public safety. And all of it stems from a corrupted temperature reading.
Absolutely.
And this brings me to the third industry the digest mentioned, which is agriculture. This one felt a bit different to me when I first read it.
How so?
Well, when I read crops overwatered or underwatered, my brain immediately goes to, me accidentally overwatering the basil plant on my kitchen sill.
Right, like a minor gardening fail.
Yeah. It sounds like this minor, easily fixable mistake. Give it some sun, it'll be fine.
I wish it were that simple. At an industrial scale, applying water at the wrong time is catastrophic.
Really catastrophic.
Yes. Modern agriculture operates on razor-thin margins across millions of acres. Farmers rely on hyperlocal forecasts and in-ground soil moisture sensors to determine their exact irrigation schedules.
Okay.
If they receive a spoofed forecast predicting a massive multi-day rainstorm, they will deliberately withhold irrigation.
Because they think nature's about to do the watering for them.
Exactly. They want to avoid drowning the root systems, and they want to save on the immense energy costs of running those industrial water pumps.
Right, those pumps take a ton of electricity, and then, let me guess, the rain just never comes.
The rain never comes. The crops enter severe drought stress during a critical growth window. And by the time the farmer realizes the forecast was a total fabrication, the yield is already permanently reduced.
The damage is done.
Yep. Or you flip the scenario. The forecast hides a natural deluge, tricking the farmer into heavily irrigating just before a massive natural storm hits.
Oh, so they water the fields, and then it cores.
The fields flood, the topsoil literally washes away, and the crops rot in the ground.
Okay, so the dependency across all three of these sectors is just absolute. We've established that the data pipeline is critical infrastructure.
It is the backbone.
But here's where we need to look at how we are actually processing this water in our metaphorical pipeline. Because the technology review piece zeroes in on the role of artificial intelligence in weather forecasting.
This is where it gets really interesting.
And I have to admit, this part threw me for a loop initially. The article argues that our increasing reliance on AI to process this data is actually what makes the whole system more vulnerable to this specific kind of sabotage.
Yeah.
Wait, I always thought the whole point of AI, especially in data analytics, was that it was smart enough to smooth out errors.
That's the marketing pitch, certainly.
Right. Like if one sensor is spitting out bad data, doesn't the AI just recognize the anomaly and ignore it? How does making the processor smarter actually make it more vulnerable?
Well, in a vacuum, yes, anomaly detection is a feature of these models. But we have to understand how these specific massive weather AIs actually function.
Okay, break that down for us.
We are moving away from traditional physics-based modeling. That's where meteorologists use fluid dynamics equations on giant supercomputers.
Right. Actually calculating how the air and water move.
Exactly. But now we are moving toward deep learning models. These AIs are trained on vast oceans of historical weather data, and they recognize incredibly complex, multidimensional patterns.
Right, so they aren't really calculating the physics of a cloud anymore. They're basically looking at current conditions and saying, the last 10,000 times the data looked exactly like this, it rained in Chicago 2 hours later.
That is a great way to summarize it. However, this introduces what we call the vulnerability paradox.
The vulnerability paradox.
Yes. An artificial intelligence has no independent sensory experience of the real world.
It can't feel the rain.
Right. It doesn't have a window to look out of. Its entire reality is completely constructed by the digital data streaming into its input layer.
So it only knows what we tell it.
Exactly. If a state-sponsored hacker or a sophisticated ransomware group doesn't try to hack the AI's core code, but instead attacks the data lake feeding it,
They poison the well.
they poison the well. And it's important to note it's not a clumsy, obvious poison. It's a highly sophisticated, subtle manipulation.
Give me an example of that. How subtle are we talking?
Let's say attackers compromise the cellular networks, transmitting data from thousands of cheap, relatively unsecured Internet of Things or IoT weather sensors distributed across the American Midwest.
Okay, so like sensors on farms and cell towers.
Right. They don't make the sensors report 150 degrees.
Because that would be obvious.
Right. That would trigger a basic error filter instantly. The system would just reject it. Instead, they just bump the reported humidity up by, say, 4%, and they drop the barometric pressure by a fraction of a millibar.
Wow. Just a tiny, tiny nudge.
Yes, but across thousands of sensors simultaneously.
The AI ingests all that subtly altered data.
And because it's a deep learning model, it recognizes this specific fabricated pattern from its training data. It applies its weights and confidently concludes that a massive, stationary, high-pressure system, a heat dome, is forming.
And it believes it completely because the pattern matches.
Exactly. The AI then synthesizes this hallucination, formats it beautifully, and pushes it out to the dashboards of every grid operator and agricultural conglomerate in the region.
And because the AI is a black box that has historically been incredibly accurate, the human operators just blindly trust it.
That is the real danger.
I mean, they don't have the time or, frankly, the cognitive ability to manually verify the millions of individual data points that led the AI to that conclusion.
And that blind trust is the ultimate payload of the attack. We have automated our decision-making to the point where human operators are largely just rubber stamping the machine's output.
Yeah.
So if the underlying data is compromised, the world's most advanced AI literally becomes the world's most efficient disinformation engine.
Man, that is grim. So let's trace the tangible, real-world domino effect of this, taking that Midwest agricultural example.
Okay.
Let's say the hackers successfully feed this fabricated data into the models, and the AI alerts farmers across a massive region that a severe multi-week drought is imminent.
All right, so the farmers, trusting the system, take immediate evasive action. They open the floodgates. Millions of gallons of water are drawn from regional reservoirs unnecessarily.
Right.
This rapidly depletes critical ecological and municipal water reserves. And the energy grid is suddenly severely taxed by the massive, unexpected demand of thousands of industrial water pumps turning on simultaneously.
But then the real weather arrives. A heady natural rainstorm that the AI failed to predict because its inputs were manipulated to hide it.
Exactly.
Now the fields are catastrophically flooded.
The immediate physical result is vast swaths of crop failure. But the secondary consequence, the next falling domino, actually happens in the financial sector.
Oh, because of the markets.
Yes. Commodities markets are heavily automated today. Trading algorithms constantly scrape weather forecasts to predict crop yields and automatically execute trades based on those predictions.
So they see the fake drought forecast.
Right. When the fake drought forecast goes out and then the real floods hit, the algorithmic trading causes the price of wheat or corn futures to swing wildly.
Wow.
Eventually, those prices skyrocket globally.
Which means the cost of basic groceries for everyday people shoots up. And, in developing nations, a sudden spike in grain prices doesn't just mean a tighter household budget.
No, it doesn't.
It translates directly to acute food insecurity and real political instability. And all of it stems from a hacker spoofing the humidity readings on some cheap sensors in a cornfield in Iowa.
It perfectly illustrates the absolute fragility of these hyper-connected systems. A localized data breach propagates into a global economic event within days.
Yeah.
And the exact same logic applies to the airline example from earlier.
Right. The cascading delays.
If you artificially generate a storm front in the AI's models over a major logistical hub, say Memphis, where massive amounts of overnight cargo are sorted, hundreds of flights are grounded.
Because they think there's a blizzard.
Supply chains snap. Manufacturing plants across the entire country sit completely idle the next morning because crucial components never arrived on those planes.
The economic sink is just massive. It really makes you realize that securing this data isn't just an IT problem for meteorologists to solve in the basement. It's quite literally a national security issue.
It is infrastructure protection.
Which brings up the solution side of the technology review piece. They urgently call for enhanced cybersecurity measures, better encryption for these remote sensors, and just generally more robust systems to ensure data integrity.
Yes, all necessary steps.
But there is a massive complication here. The digest notes that this cyber vulnerability is growing at the exact same time our actual climate is becoming inherently more unpredictable.
That is the compounding variable that makes this specific threat so incredibly difficult to neutralize.
Because the baseline is shifting.
Exactly. We discussed earlier how AI and human operators look for anomalies to spot bad data. If a sensor reported a blizzard in Miami in July, the system would reject it because it falls so far outside the historical baseline of normal weather.
Right, it would stick out instantly. Everyone would know it's a glitch.
But the global climate is currently undergoing rapid, chaotic changes. The historical baseline is completely broken.
So what's normal anymore?
Exactly. We are regularly witnessing weather events that completely shatter historical records.
Yeah, that's true.
Unprecedented heat domes that stall over cities for weeks, atmospheric rivers dumping months of rain in a few hours, flash freezes reaching deeper into southern latitudes than ever recorded. Extreme, anomalous weather is basically becoming our daily reality.
Oh, I see the trap here. If the actual real-world weather is constantly throwing out these unprecedented anomalies,
Yes.
how do you mathematically distinguish a legitimate climate disaster from a cyber attack?
You have identified the absolute core dilemma. The erratic reality of climate change acts as the perfect smokescreen for data sabotage.
Because everything looks crazy anyway.
Right. If an attacker introduces a bizarre extreme weather forecast into the data stream today, it is exponentially harder for anomaly detection algorithms to confidently flag it as fake.
Wow.
The human operator looks at a terrifying, off-the-charts forecast and thinks, well, we've had 3 once-in-a-century floods this decade. Maybe this is just the 4th.
It creates an environment of total ambiguity. You are just completely paralyzed. You don't know if you're looking at Mother Nature doing something wild or a state-sponsored hacker, but you have to react regardless because the consequences of ignoring a real warning are just too high.
And that ambiguity is what makes verifying the data not just a technical challenge, but a survival imperative. We can no longer rely on our historical intuition to tell us what is plausible.
Because our intuition is outdated.
Exactly.
Mhm.
We have to mathematically trust the instruments, which means those instruments and the entire pipeline delivering their readings must be fortified against tampering.
Let's take a breath and synthesize what we've unpacked here today.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is.
Yeah.
We started by completely rethinking the weather forecast, moving from the idea of a helpful little phone app to understanding it as the critical data pipeline, the municipal water supply for global industries.
Right.
We saw how dispatchers, grid operators, and farmers rely on hyper-accurate data to balance fuel, power, and food on a razor's edge.
Millisecond by millisecond in some cases.
Yeah, and then we explored the paradox of AI, how these brilliant pattern recognition engines become massive liabilities when malicious actors poison the data lake, leading to blind trust in fabricated realities.
The disinformation engine.
Exactly. And finally, we looked at how the chaos of a changing climate provides the absolute perfect camouflage for these attacks, basically destroying our ability to easily spot the anomalies.
It is a dense and deeply interconnected web of vulnerabilities, and the technology review piece does an excellent job of raising the alarm.
It certainly woke me up.
But as we synthesize these sources, I want to leave you with an angle to ponder that actually builds on this intersection of AI and security.
Okay, lay it on us.
We've established that AI processing is a vulnerability because it relies on these massive, unverified data streams, right?
Right. It's a black box eating whatever we feed it.
But Could specialized AI also be the only viable defense?
Oh, interesting. Like a sort of fighting fire with fire approach.
Precisely that. If the sheer volume of IoT data and the chaos of climate change make it basically impossible for human operators or traditional filters to verify the pipeline, we may need adversarial architecture.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, imagine a future where one generative AI is tasked with modeling the weather, while a completely separate, heavily armed detective AI is tasked exclusively with trying to tear that model apart.
Like an auditor.
Yes, a security AI that constantly cross-references millions of data points, explicitly hunting for the microscopic synthetic fingerprints of human manipulation in the wind speeds and the temperature drops.
That is wild to think about.
We could be looking at a silent digital war playing out thousands of times a second inside our data centers, just to guarantee that when the dashboard says it will rain, it actually will.
An AI guard dog,
Yeah,
basically constantly sniffing the water supply for poison before it ever hits the city.
exactly.
It's a fascinating and, maybe slightly intimidating vision of where this all has to go. Because the next time you flip on your air conditioning or buy a loaf of bread or board a flight, just remember, the stability of all those everyday actions relies entirely on the integrity of invisible data streaming from a sensor in a field halfway across the country.
It really makes you appreciate the complexity of it all.
It definitely does. We want to deeply thank you for joining us. As we explored this hidden vulnerability today, stay curious and stay informed.